Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is Feb 27, 2024. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. It's an honor. Good. That's what it's all about, laughing. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here again with Jai, Utah. Jai, right. Jai, Utah, part two. Thank you for so much for part one. And just excited about part two.
Me too. I loved our conversation. It was many months ago, but
it was many months ago, and it was really fun. So the one thing we didn't really get into deeply was music. So I wanted to start off by asking you if you could just sort of talk about the tipping point where you found your calling in life to pursue music, and give us a little background, like what were you listening to as a kid? Was it the radio? Were your parents playing music live in the house? Just a little background on that. And then where was that tipping point? That's my calling.
Well, my father was in the music business, and he owned a series of record companies. For a while, he was pretty successful, but he had some great medals of honor. For example, he put out Al Green's first album.
Wow.
Yeah, and he put out Blondie's first album, and so our home was just filled with music and filled with basically the top 40 music of the late 60s and early 70s, which was awesome music. So, and my father also, every week he would go to the radio stations and bring home the top 20 singles and play them for me and my sister. My sister is a year and a half older. And we were kids, but he'd ask us our opinions about these records. And I was a little snobbish, I guess, but, it was filled with music. I went to some recording sessions. I think when I was 7, I went to the recording session of Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels. Good golly, Miss Molly, Devil with a Blue Dress On. Do you know that record?
Dude, that's my lifeblood. I'm from Michigan.
Okay, so
I know this. This is a fact. Bruce Springsteen is a Mitch Ryder wannabe. Exactly. I'll debate anybody on that. No, I love Mitch Ryder, and he's truly a blues guy, and he's still singing the blues. But that record, those two songs were amazing impact on me.
It was pivotal for me too. And I saw him. I didn't see him doing the lead vocal, but when I was in the studio, he was overdubbing tambourine.
Yeah.
And, that just was so amazing. So I started piano lessons when I was around 6, and I just knew that I loved music. I wasn't happy with my piano lessons after a while. And I dropped them, and then I discovered the banjo. And I think I can say when I first strummed the strings of a 5-string banjo, my home life growing up was chaotic and filled with, it was very troubled. Let's just leave it at that. But when I strummed those strings on the banjo, I felt a kind of safety, like a sanctuary.
Safety.
And from then on, I knew I wanted to be a musician. I didn't have, my career kind of goals didn't solidify more till I was in my 40s, but we were hippies and we didn't think so much about career.
Yeah.
But I knew that the only thing I wanted to do was music from very early on.
And then are you writing songs about when is there where that's a beautiful story, because I can really imagine just strumming the 5 strings of the banjo and feeling that vibration really deep. So where did you go? Because you're hearing songwriters early on. These people are songwriters as well. Where did you find that where you go, well, I can write a song and not just be a player so much?
That's a good question, because I guess when I was 18, so I was really into old-timey music, old-timey Appalachian banjo music. And I wasn't writing music, but I was learning it. And I auditioned for my high school of music and art. I auditioned on the banjo. But then I got Yeah, and I was also really into Jimi Hendrix, and then I kind of switched over to electric guitar. And rather than writing songs, I became, fascinated in the exploration of finding sounds.
Yeah.
And then I got turned on to Indian music and basically dropped everything and started studying music with Ali Akbar Khan. And so I really wasn't writing songs. I was studying this ancient music and absorbing it and absorbing and absorbing it. And I think maybe I was around 19 or 20. I started to think about writing songs.
Yeah.
And they were like English songs, but more in an Indian. I was, from the very beginning, was exploring this mixture of Eastern and Western music. And I even remember some of the very, very first songs I wrote. They're simple and kind of innocent and naive, but that
Yeah.
was me.
Jai, it's amazing you just mentioned Hendrix because I've studied Hendrix for 60 years deeply and totally moved by him. And usually people go, oh, it's the greatest rock guitarist ever. But they don't say he's a great singer and a great lyricist. But I just want to isolate one line that I always am amazed at. I can hear happiness. Now, to me, that is as good as Cole Porter or Irving Berlin. And
Yeah,
it's a
I
black dude
agree.
from Seattle, and there's some amazing lyric writing there. So when you started to write your own music, I'm curious your thoughts and maybe how, if it's changed. A screenwriting teacher told me great art or great music, great film is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great film is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process when you're writing your own song?
Well, that's a great question. And I think my answer, for better or for worse, my intention in all the music that I do, but particularly when I'm writing music, and I tend to have an easier time writing melodies and music,
Yeah.
whereas words come a little bit more difficult to me. And many of the songs that I do, as you know, what I'm more known for is singing the Sanskrit chants, but
Yeah.
with my own music. So my intention has always been somehow to grab a hold of a spiritual connection, and this is like when I was 18 and 19 and 20, and it's now that I'm 72, it hasn't changed. Um, I also now have come to the place where I see how my music helps other people, can be of service, and it which is a beautiful feeling. But I didn't feel that for decades and decades. It was all just like my desperate longing to feel connected to the divine. And so,
That
yeah.
that's amazing, beautiful, because it's proof is my wife and I felt spiritual connection through hearing, footprints, and it helped bond us as a couple. It was like the music I wooed her with,
I love that.
and it's for real. I mean, when we put it on, it's like that tingling feel, that and Nina Rhoda's soundtrack to Juliet of the Spirits. Those two are like, woo. But there's Marcel Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your audience when you're writing your melodies?
I'm not.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say 100% that I'm not, because there are times for example, if I'm about to play at a festival, and I'm planning my set and stuff, and I look at the songs that I have in my set, and I think, it's missing a certain vibe. I think I'm going to see if I can create something that will that adds, because like the set is kind of like a palette of colors, and
Yeah.
in the same way, a song also contains a palette of colors. But in this
Yeah.
sense, a set is, a bunch of different moods that you put together to create a whole beautiful experience. And sometimes I feel like I'm missing, like, oh, it's missing this, well, for example, auburn or something, some color.
Yeah.
And so I'll see if I can sit down and make something up that will satisfy that. But that's less often than
Yeah.
than normal. But I do that, and that sometimes kind of brings the, when you have like there's a function. There's a function. I need this for this function. Sometimes that makes something really great. It kind of puts the fire on and the focus on.
Dude, you captured two words there. Amazing. ESP, because you anticipated the next question. I was going to ask you, what is the function of music?
Well, like in the Indian tradition, from back in like the Vedas, 3000 BC time, they say that sound is God.
Yeah.
And as the traditions developed over centuries, that kind of expanded into sound is the doorway to God.
Yeah.
And so, and I use the word God like, for lack of a better word, but for spirit, for the infinite, and I think music elevates the heart and kind of inspires the mind and helps people, helps me, helps you to get in touch with the kind of a more higher realm, higher spirit, and that can just as much be sad music as joyful, ecstatic music, because we're human and we contain all those emotions and all those moods, and all of those moods, through them we're able to access the higher realms, which coexist with all the realms. So it's not like it's up there and we're down here. It's all simultaneous. But I guess the less mundane realms. Maybe that's the way to put it.
Yeah, it's soul music. Like you brought up Mitch Ryder, he's blue-eyed soul. And that's like for make you dance, SOLE and SOUL.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I like spelling sold out with SOUL''D. I'm sold out.
I like that.
But Cage said it. John Cage said the function of music he learned from his teacher was to soothe the soul and make it susceptible for divine intervention. And that
like
is
that.
so well put.
That's so well put.
So, Jai, there's this formula McLuhan came up with, or a probe, that everything we invent extends some humanness. Like the knife and fork extends our teeth, shutter in a camera or a projector extends our eyelid, and even maybe religion or philosophy, non-tangible, extends our consciousness. What does the stringed instrument extend for you? Since you started with banjo and did guitar, these are strings vibrating. What does the stringed instrument, what humanness does it extend for you?
I guess it extends for me, or helps manifest in me a feeling of safety,
Yeah.
protection, and and with that, a feeling of love.
Yeah.
I do feel like my main instrument, this has developed over the years, but now my main instrument is my voice.
Yeah.
So in a way, the stringed instruments create a landscape for me to sing within. And everything I do, I'm a perfectionist, and I understand the the poison of perfectionism. So Usually when I start something, my standards are so high that I make myself crazy. And then I take a breath and I say, no one likes a perfect person anyway.
Wow.
Let's just be
Yeah,
completely human and know that it's good enough. And so every bit of my humanness, I feel, is extended through what I do.
that's amazing. Every bit. That's really good. Every bit. Again, you anticipate a lot of questions coming up. And this one, you already said the word. Aaron Copeland says the four ingredients or elements of music are melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color. You already brought up melody for a second. Before we go into all four, how would you describe what is tone color to the normal person on the street, not an academic musical term? What does tone color mean?
Well, I think the normal person on the street probably doesn't think in those terms. But for one who does, uh, like a sound, there's a million shapes and there's a million hues and there's a million like emotional extensions that could happen in every tone.
Yeah,
And the most, it's simply you could say the tone is bright, so it's like a gold, or the tone is dark, so it's like a deep brown or a maroon.
yeah,
But that's like way too simplistic because it's so subtle. The tone can be brittle or the tone can be soothing, and
yeah,
in music, I think that the best music incorporates all those colors and all those tones and
exactly.
all those shapes. Maybe not in every single song,
Yeah,
but in its repertoire.
yeah. And so then these four elements that he talks about melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color how do you balance? How do you focus and how do you integrate? Like, is there one you more stress when you're writing a song, or just sort of the process of the integration of those four elements?
Well, back step for one moment, and let me share that in the Indian traditional music, and when I say Indian, I'm talking from the Indian subcontinent.
Yeah,
Traditionally, music consists of melody, rhythm, and drone.
really. There's our melody, rhythm, and drone. Wow.
And so the context, the concept rather, is pretty different because there's no harmony, there's no chords in traditional Indian music. And I mean, yes, there's tone color.
Yeah,
I never heard it discussed, but I know that every great singer, a great
yeah,
instrumentalist is always trying to perfect the beauty of their tone, and to each person that beauty might mean something different.
yeah,
But everything arises out of this drone. It's kind of cosmic, and it's a little, you could say it's a little hippie, but on the other hand, it's millennia. It's so old. And
yeah,
so every performance or presentation of Indian music, particularly classical, but even the folk music as well, there is something, some instrument or some voice or something that's holding a tone. And
yeah.
then the notes of the raga, of the scale, in and of themselves, they don't have all that much quality. Their quality arises out of their relationship to the drone.
Unbelievable. I got to insert one quick thing. If you see the movie Rumble, it's the history of how American Indian music affected mainly rock. They do a little jazz.
Oh,
At
I'd
one,
love to.
dude, it's an unbelievable movie because, you say either Charlie Patton or Robert Johnson's the the father of the blues. Well, Charlie Patton had American Indian blood. And
Yeah.
this woman takes the stylus on an album and she puts it on the record. So you're like more present hearing it being put on the record and you're listening to Charlie Patton and you start hearing boom, 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 boom. But you don't hear it for our ears. We're 60s white dudes. We don't hear that. We hear the blues. But when she says, listen to that, she pulls it out and says, check that out. That's an Indian drone. It is sort of a drone beat. Boom, boom, boom. You know, and I was like, how did I not know that? You know, we've heard all this music all our lives, and we don't, you know. So yeah.
But Jerry, I'm reading a book now that like I got to share it with you. I'm gonna get the cover and show you.
Yeah.
It's called let's see, where is it? There.
Yeah, that's Well of Souls. Oh, Undiscovering. Yeah.
The banjo's hidden history. So I always, you know, I've always known that the banjo had its roots in African music and was brought over by the enslaved people. But what she's writing in this book through like tons of research is that in the Caribbean, mostly in the Caribbean and West Indies, in the like 1600s, the banjo was a secret instrument that was used for rituals.
Yeah.
And you know, and she describes it, and it's amazing to read, because I've always felt this kind of relationship between banjo music, the old banjo music, not bluegrass. I mean, I love bluegrass, but I'm not referring to bluegrass, but the old time. Yeah, and
Appalachian,
and then what even was before that was hidden ritual music, and it's amazing. And it kind of, you know, I always felt this connection with the banjo, with singers from the Himalayas and Tibetan singers, and you know, that kind of high calling sound. So it's really cool. So anyway, back to your question. So sometimes,
one other quickie thing is tuba throat singers. Exactly. That's sort of droney too.
Totally. And their instruments are trippy and droney.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
So anyway, sometimes I will be playing my harmonium and singing, and I have a drone going. Like I create a drone with some apps. I used to have a electronic drone machine, and you know, I've had different things over the years, and in that creative process, I'm just focusing on the melody and what nuances and subtleties can I bring out in the melody that will satisfy what my heart is longing for in that moment.
Yeah.
And in those cases, I'm not dealing with harmony at all. Then sometimes I will take those melodies and okay, I'll put the harmonium down and turn off the drone and pick up my guitar. And this is something I've been exploring for years. How can I find the beautiful harmonic structures, chord structures, that will support the subtleties of the Indian melody that I just created? Yeah. And so that, you know, I've the last decade on and off, I've been studying Brazilian guitar.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And I'm not good at it really, but I found that, you know, learning so many more subtle chord voicings and extensions of chords allows me to support the melodies in more beautiful ways than I used to be able to when I just didn't know all those chords, you know. But then on the other hand, sometimes I'm just playing and I'm just super relaxed and I'm playing the banjo or the guitar, and I'm kind of make up a folk song, you know. When I say folk song, I mean it's all music is folk song. So I don't know, but you know what I mean. Something
I know what you mean
in the folk tradition.
Yeah. But I just have to interject. Have you ever listened to Native Dancer by Wayne Shorter and Milton?
Of course.
That album is mind blowing. When Wayne died, I couldn't take it off. I kept playing it in a loop. But it's so important that we got that in the 60s with Jobim and Stan Getz bringing in Brazilian music. I mean, that was like so rich for us to. So then my friend, and then just talk about rhythm a little, because I mean, when I think of Ali Akbar Khan, I think of Henry Kaiser saying, if you want to become a great guitarist, listen to Ali Akbar Khan. And I goes, oh, okay. So I started listening to him, and it's like, I says, that's funk, man. I was amazed.
Well,
There's rhythm involved. So maybe just you talked great about tone, color, harmony, melody. Just talk about rhythm a little, maybe.
well, I just remember one time, you know, Ali Akbar Khan, it's Khan, Khan.
Yeah.
You know, he had a school. It still exists, but he died, you know, 17 years ago. But he had a school in Marin County that I used to go to all the time. And one time I was sitting in the back of the room and I was just talking to him, and he says to me, Jay, because he had a funny way of talking, Jay, why are you so bad at rhythm? And I looked at him and I said, oh, well, I actually thought I was good at rhythm. but you know, in the classical, the Indian folk music is so funky. But the classical music, the you know, there's so many rhythmic cycles and patterns, and it gets very abstract and very well, you know, when the player is really good, the tabla player, of course, it's very physical and you can feel it. But to understand it is very mental. and I guess I never really did get that. I could go into the 4/4. You know, I was really good in sevens, and I was pretty good in fives and tens. But once you got into the 11s and the 13s and the 8s, I couldn't crack it. My mind couldn't crack it, and I was really behind a lot of the other students in that sense.
I don't think you were behind. I think you were advanced, because if you came out of Mitch Ryder and Al Green, dude, that's the best rhythm in the world. If you're an American white dude, I mean, I got obsessed because I got obsessed with Frank Zappa, who did all that too. But he was obsessed with greasy R&B, rhythm and blues. So then my friend says the 3 T's of music are technique, theory, and taste. Technique, you've learned how to play this stuff. Theory, you know the structure. How does one acquire taste?
Well, back to first, let me get the technique a little bit. You know, I did a show this past Saturday, and I was practicing some of my songs. It was a solo concert where you know, a lot more attention obviously is on me. Rather than when I'm playing with the band. And so I was working on some of the songs, and particularly the guitar songs. And I was having a hard time because, well, you know, I've got some arthritis in my hands now, and my fingers are just not as nimble as they used to be. I mean, it's just the way it is. So I'm struggling internally, emotionally, psychologically, I guess, with accepting, okay, my technique is not so great now, and I have to accept that, well, it's good enough. It's who I am. It's what I am at this point in my life, and the real deal is how much heart and how much feeling, how much humanness, how much emotion I can convey. And so, you know, and also reminding me that, well, you know, you got to keep practicing, or you'll lose it. But that the fact is, for me, that my technique isn't great. So I put technique, because of that, I put technique lower on the priority list. Taste, you know, what was the second one? It was technique, and what was the middle one? Theory
And taste.
Okay, theory. I've been immersed in theory since I was a kid, and learning Western theory as well as, you know, the Indian music theory is so deep, and I love going into that. Taste. I think we all have taste. I don't know. I don't know how you can like create taste. Not everybody's taste is my taste, and I think one thing is accepting that all of our tastes is unique and what we love is unique. There are musicians, of course, and well, in every field of the arts, that try to make their music, consciously. I want to make this music that will appeal to every taste. Those are more to me like more like business people in the arts,
Yeah.
and I, it's too snobby to put it down. Um, but for me, my own tastes are very particular, and sometimes I'm listening to stuff with my wife, and she won't like something, she'll appreciate it,
Yeah.
and then likewise she'll play something, and I said, I really appreciate that, but I don't really like it.
Yeah.
And and that's totally cool. I mean, it's totally very obviously perfect.
Yeah.
Because we resonate with whatever we resonate with, and
That's it.
we're also different.
Jai, the quote by McLuhan that I apply after this question is, song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language difference. So it's interesting because you came out of white American music a lot, and then you gravitated towards. I can read it again, but I'm curious your thoughts on that quote.
Well, I wonder sometimes which came first, though, language or music. I don't know. When we think of ancient people, were they humming and making sounds and making rhythms and beats before they were talking?
Yeah.
I don't really know how to answer that. It's
Well,
certainly.
you answered the question by having triple double ESP, because the next question is, what is more fundamental, music or language? Literally, that is my next question. So it's funny because it's sort of like implying a lot of people don't like the McLuhan quote because they go, well, no, Brazilian music. Like when we heard Brazilian music, back then, we didn't go, well, what are they saying? We didn't need to really know. That's like T.S. Eliot saying poetry can communicate before it's understood. But then when we heard the tuba throat singers, I mean, it was transcendental. And then they said, you know what their music's about? Three things: their horses, snow, and their boots.
Yes, I know. I know that.
So, this language difference thing, it is sort of funny because then people say in sort of agreement with McLuhan's probe is that, maybe Japanese people talk fast and Chinese people talk fast, so their music, or the way Indian people speak reflects the way their music is. So I don't know. I mean, it's definitely in the rap tradition in America, that is like, the way you spoke in the ghetto became the way you sang your song, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. Uh,
Yeah.
um, but I've heard rap like from Algeria, and I've heard rap. Certainly, there's like a lot of French hip hop,
Yeah.
and I've heard Indian, Hindustani hip hop also.
Yeah.
And gosh, it all sounds a little bit different. I
Yeah.
couldn't really put my finger on it because the background music, is kind of similar.
Yeah.
But
Right, that becomes
the
similar because the James Brown, they go, "Where'd your music come from?" He says, "Africa." Then they
yeah
ask King Sunny Ade, "Where'd your music come from?" He goes, "James Brown."
yeah
So it's like this Mobius strip, man. But the other thing is, I remember Dr. Demento playing like a song from the guys picking cotton from the 30s, and he goes, "There's the first rap." It wasn't called rap then, but it had that kind of metric flow to it.
yeah.
So tell me an instrumental that makes you laugh. Because this relationship with language and music, you would think in order to make you laugh, doesn't it have to have words? No, there's songs. Is there any instrumental you can name that makes you laugh?
You know, I don't know. What's coming to my mind is the music that was used in the early cartoons.
Oh yeah.
But I can't name a
Well,
song.
that's well, no, that's it's actually Carl Stalling. It's
Uh-huh.
amazing you said that because when Carl Stalling became popular, it's because John Zorn released his instrumental music as instrumental music. I would ask people, have you ever watched a Bugs Bunny cartoon with your eyes shut? And they go, no. Try it because you don't hear the music really. You are so integrated with Bugs and the music that the music's kind of like not separate.
And the really early cartoons, there was no dialogue.
That's it. Yeah,
You know,
very good.
Tom and Jerry and
Tom and Jerry,
and Mickey
exactly.
Mouse and stuff. You know, then later they added dialogue, but it was all just visual and
Yeah,
music and sound effects.
yeah.
Um, Another thing that comes to mind is the kind of the space age lounge music of
Oh, I love that.
Esquivel and others.
Esquivel.
That makes me chuckle. And I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's good. I like that. Space Age Bachelor Pad music is I'm really fond of it.
Yeah.
Now,
Some Charlie Parker makes me laugh. Only,
there you
but not because it's really funny, but it's more because like, what?
yeah. Well, that's like we're going to get into that. Well, let's just do that because you brought up Charlie. You're so easy to talk with because
Hmm.
every little thing flows perfectly into the next. Like there's a through line. McLuhan called it complex clairvoyance. Like
Complex clairvoyance.
yeah, Zappa called it conceptual continuity. It's like, but you know, Monk, my friend in the greatest homeless Venice artist, Duggo, he said Monk, because Monk can make me laugh. Thelonious Monk, his
Yeah, I can see that
yeah,
also.
like Charlie Parker, and he said Monk heard all the notes that Charlie Parker heard, but only decided to play some of them.
Yeah, and it was almost random, like every
Yeah,
11th note, every you
right.
know.
Like
Monk
this.
is so random sounding, and
Yeah.
Charlie Parker. Well, my son was just visiting us the other day, and he was playing a song by, gosh, what was it? It was a band. Oh, maybe it was the. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But Herbie Hancock was the keyboardist. Oh
Yeah.
no! It was Chaka Khan.
Okay.
And there was a sample of Charlie Parker playing this.
Oh, they sampled Bird. Yeah.
And then Herbie Hancock learned it and played it along with the sample, and it's 30-second notes. It's like like so fast.
Yeah.
And like it made me laugh, and then it made me, you know, the first reaction was just laughing, and then it kind of puts you in this kind of sense of wonder.
Yeah.
Wow, you know, where did that come from?
Yeah. Charles Yardbird Parker, what a master. And you know, he wanted to study with Edgar Varese. What a rich history. But let's go back to Monk for a second. Monk said there are no wrong notes. Any comment?
Well, that's the spirit of performing and spontaneity. I agree, but in a different way. It's not like, I don't think. Well, I couldn't say, but I don't think that Monk meant that music could just be completely haphazard and like
Yeah.
sloppy kind of.
Yeah.
But if a note comes in that wasn't the note that you meant to play, you see in it, rather than cringing at yourself, which I'll sometimes do, but I try not to do. But when I'm more in the flow and that happens, then I see a beauty in that. And if I'm really in the flow, what I'll do is follow that quote wrong note and see where that leads. But you know, there's a lot of different headspaces, because as I said before, I'm haunted by a certain impossible perfectionism.
Yeah.
So often, like, and also with singing, sometimes I'll be singing and my voice will crack. And it's very odd because one of my favorite singers is Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
And yet I get really down on myself if my voice starts to crack a little here and there.
Yeah.
So I see it as a psychological issue, not a musical issue, because musically I understand that. Well, I once said to somebody, I was in a down mood, right? And I said, oh, my voice just sounds like an old man's voice now. And the person said to me, what is not beautiful about an old man's voice?
Exactly.
And so likewise with the supposedly wrong notes and but like a super improviser like some of these jazz musicians, which is at a realm that I couldn't even begin to touch. Then I know, like with Monk, he played notes and chords, and something might come in, and he'll just pursue that, and find the beauty of it. Then
that's actually Herbie. Herbie gave the lecture about playing with Miles when he's really young, and he hit a wrong note, and he looked, and Miles knew he hit a wrong note, and Miles knew how to work it in. And that was the big lesson he learned from Miles. Like, you can hit a wrong note. Like Hadda Brooks, great boogie woogie pianist, we said, any comment? There are no wrong notes. She goes, there's wrong notes. It's just how good you cover them up.
Yeah, well, there's that too. And then I think of Ali Akbar Khan again, So here's a man who his training, the Indian classical tradition of training, nobody practices like the way they practice, and it was super consuming. So maybe John Coltrane, maybe. But anyway, so Kansab, that's what we were that's what we would call him. I remember being involved in a recording session with him. I was a producer of the recording session, and with him being producer is just sort of like being there and making sure the tape is running. Anyway, so he was doing this classical piece, and prior to turning on the record, he spent 3 hours tuning the instrument, tuning it, retuning it, having a cigarette, having a cup of tea, tuning it, retuning it, and till and was kind of driving us crazy because you're in the studio, record plant, time is money, all that stuff. But he was completely indifferent to everything else. So then when he played it, there was a couple of places where he flubbed a little. And so we're listening back, and mostly it was so beautiful. And then we heard the flub, and I turned to him and I said, should we correct that? You want to fix that? And he felt for a second, kind of looked and said, no, it's fine.
Yeah.
Because he'd done the work, right?
Yeah.
And he's a human being, and human beings are not without flaws. And so he didn't trip about it at all, because he knew there was no way that he didn't prepare as much as humanly possible.
Yeah. That's good.
So that's another attitude towards.
No, really beautiful. And it's back to Thelonious Monk saying music is math. And there are variations in math, but we think, like, again, going back to Zappa, he starts a song, 1 and 1 is 11. 2 plus 2 equals 22. Well, yeah, if you put a 1 next to a 1, it's 11. But no, not, so it is how you look at it, the perspective. This is Ruth Draper, and I'm curious, you being a performer, you play in front of people. Ruth said, the key is to bring the audience up onto the stage and into the scene with you. It is they who must give you even more than you give them in the way of imagination and creative power. That sounds good, but how do you do it?
Well, in chanting, and with all the different kind of musical variations that can be a host for the chanting, a lot of the time my chanting with the audience is call and response. Yeah. So I'll sing, and then the audience will sing, and even though the music can go through a lot of different changes, and I'll explain and tell the words to the audience before we start, so that it's not, so it's accessible. And in that case, then the feeling is so beautiful, Jerry. Then And then it's odd then when the audience applauses at the end of the song, because then I say like, well, you're applauding for yourself, and that's great. That's all, because we're all we are the band. Let's applaud for ourselves. And
I've seen George Clinton Parliament Funkadelic. He's got 30 people singing on stage. He holds the mic to the audience, and we sing the entire concert.
that's so cool.
I said, man, you got an easy job, dude.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, there's this other guy, Leonard Cohen, said the only way you can sell a concert is to put yourself at risk. And if you don't do that, people know. What role does risk play in your creative process?
Well, for me, every time I go on stage in front of people, I'm completely out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
I've my whole life I've had a really bad stage fright, and I used to drink and take drugs, and now I'm a sober person. But it's a total risk to me, and almost always I start a concert with an improvisation. And, in a way that's crazy, because if you're nervous and you're freaking out, why don't you start with something that you know?
Yeah.
But I prefer to start with, usually just with a harmonium and my voice, and just exploring. I know what words I'm going to sing. So lyrically, I know what I'm going to sing. It says certain prayers, but melodically, it's completely spontaneous.
Wow.
And I guess it's my way of, and sometimes I'm really nervous, and my voice quavers, and I used to hate that. And now I feel like, well, if, I want to be as vulnerable as I can. And if my voice quavers, well, so be it. That's where I am. But usually in the course of that, I call it invocation, usually in the course of that, my insides do settle down. And, then the rest of the evening, I do feel more at ease.
It's amazing. Because the question following would be, what does courage mean to you now? I mean, that takes courage, right? That's not easy. Wouldn't it be easier to start a song you're used to warm up and then get into it? It seems that's courageous. What does courage mean to you now?
Moving forward with fear.
Yeah.
I mean, with or without, but not being paralyzed by fear, but moving forward with fear.
Yeah.
Sometimes I it's kind of like minimizes the issue a little bit, but sometimes I say fun with fear.
Yeah.
Which is not really great, because sometimes it can be really a turmoil inside.
Yeah.
But regardless, if I ever write a memoir, it's going to be called Sing or Die. And this is not telling other people to sing or die. This is echoing the voice of my own soul when I was so afraid of singing in public. But I knew, some part of me knew that if I didn't just start singing, like something inside of me was going to shrivel up.
Yeah.
So sing or die,
Love it. Actually, that's a question towards the end. So now I won't have to answer that. I ask you that question, but I will do the follow-up. Is the publisher wants to release your autobiography, Sing or Die, and they want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell?
I couldn't care less. Come on. Well, I guess it would be pretty cool if all the books could smell like Hawaiian. What is that flower? Frangipani or something like that.
Cool.
I don't know. Basically, I read my books on Kindle now because I can make the print really big.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. But here's the real follow-up to Sing or Die. Can you forget to die?
What do you mean?
Well, that's a funny question, because people aren't sure if I mean it literally or metaphorically. So you could put it in the context you want. whether you want to answer it both ways or one or the other.
Well, for me, it's like, can I forget that I'm going to die? I can, and I do, and I don't want to, and I want to.
Yeah, that's really thorough there, dude. You covered the waterfront there. You should see. I just added that question a couple years ago, and it's so wild how it goes. People usually do that. I go, what do you mean? But I think all the great people, like you talk about Charlie Parker, he forgot to die because he still lives so prominently,
Yeah.
in my life and your life. Viola Spolin is an interesting character. She took Martin Buber and kind of was a social worker in Chicago who did role-playing exercises and started basically comedy improv. So
Oh,
she's
wow.
the mother of Groundlings in Second City and Saturday Night Live. Here's what she said that's applicable. If the audience cannot see your struggle to achieve something, they cannot root for you to achieve it. So, what role has struggle played in your creative process?
Well, although I wish this wasn't the case, I feel like I'm always struggling. I feel like I'm always, and sometimes that struggle is a beautiful feeling. And sometimes that struggle is not a beautiful feeling. But
Yeah.
I feel like I'm always kind of trying to break the dam.
Yeah.
Whether it's the dam of my emotions or whether it's the dam of, like my mundane consciousness, or whether it's the dam of
Yeah.
trying to do something, in the craft, trying to do it in a more beautiful way. It's always a struggle. But in terms of the audience, I briefly touched that. I used to, before going on any stage, I had to get either drunk or loaded in some way or another.
Yeah.
Because I was so terrified. Then after getting, so then I was in a treatment place, and then I thought and realized that I was never gonna. I'll always play music, but music was not going to be my profession anymore because it was too scary. It triggered too much. And then they showed a video of Robin Williams, our dear departed Robin Williams,
Yeah.
in Carnegie Hall, and he starts his set, and it's like super funny, and then he goes to the edge of the stage, and goes into a fetal position and says, "This is the first time I've done this sober, and I'm completely terrified." And he ran off the stage, and then he came back. But for me, this answered the question for me, and like I realized that honesty, authenticity, and humanness not only is what will allow me to continue, but is what allows the audience to really feel with you.
Yeah.
Because all of us struggle with those things.
Yeah.
And so for a long time after, a couple of years after first getting sober, I would actually say to the audience, I'm so nervous. I just want you to know. And boy, do people love you when they see you're struggling.
Yeah. I think Viola nailed it with that statement, because just going into comedy improv, and then Mike Kelly, a great artist, said, making art is making your problems other people's problems. Now, there's a lot to that, but here's a great jazz writer, Ben Ratliff. I mean sound, as it has long functioned among jazz players, as a mystical term of art, as in every musician finally needs a sound, a full and sensible embodiment of their artistic personality, such that at best it can be heard in a single note. So me and you can hear Jimmy and we go, that's Jimmy. We can hear Miles, and Ben said, oh, Miles is fragile and pointed. So he put it into two words. He said, Coltrane, slightly undercooked and urgent. If a music writer was going to summarize Jai's sound in 2 words, what 2 words would you go, they got me?
Desperate and loving.
Oh, that is beautiful. I'm glad you. It's so long to ask that question, but it is funny because it's sort of people feel it's being egotistical, but it's not. So, Jai, what do you think the motive of the cave artist was? And it's funny, if you see Herzog's film, they show you a flute, and we never know really what the cave musicians played, but they kind of imagine it because they found a flute that was that old. And then even Mickey Hart's written about the history of what musicians did. But cave art, cave dance, and cave music, all that, what was their motive overall, in your opinion?
Well, there's a feeling that I sometimes have, which is like, God, see me. Don't forget about me. I'm here. See me. And art kind of sometimes is saying that. It's saying, see me. I'm here. Well, of course we can't know what the caveman was feeling or thinking, but I think there's an element of like, I'm a human being. And by putting this picture on the wall, I'm extending the fact that I'm a human being. Please see me.
It's amazing because it's exactly, again, you're anticipating the next question is, it's 2 parts. Why do humans tendency to archive, see me, save this stuff? Is it more innate and more invented? And do you have plans for your own archive? And I'll set it up like this. The word archive came about in 1400. Keep safe, free from harm. 200 years later, it's what we think of it. Records preserved as evidence. So, the Egyptians put stuff in their coffin with them. And then the history of libraries, I go to a library every day, but I love the futurists who said, destroy all the museums and libraries, because they were more like, well, why don't we be like one of your pals, Ram Dass, be here now? Why worry about the past? Live in the moment. And so, even Wyndham Lewis said the great line, artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. So why you think this need or want to archive is more innate or more invented?
Well, I can only really, in this case, speak for myself. And well, I got to preface it with 2 things. First of all, I'm going to have to get off soon.
Okay.
So that's one thing. But second of all, just thinking about how a lot of very, very, super successful artists now are selling their catalogs, and how, in a way, I understand it, but in another way, it seems very strange to me. Like emotionally, financially, I can get it, I can see it, but emotionally, it's like the stuff that you create is like your children.
Yeah.
But I've had a couple of things in my life, like when I had a divorce, I don't know, 25 years ago or something like that, my ex threw away all the things that I had saved.
Yeah.
Of my own work and my own stuff, and then my wife Nubia, God bless her, she is always wanting to optimize our space, because we've lived for a long time. Our house right now that we just moved into is a little bit bigger, but we lived in a very, very small house for a very, very long time. And my urge, my like want is, no, this is a concert I gave 30 years ago, and I have a cassette of it. You got to save it. And she says, okay. And then like a year later, we're looking at it again, and she says, well, have you listened to this over the last year? And I said, no. And she said, okay, well, have you thought about it over the last year? And, and she said, well, let's be real. Have you thought about it even one iota over the last 3
Yeah.
decades?
Yeah.
And I said, no. And so, okay, so I agree. So we get rid of stuff. And I have, I have my published 20 or so CDs that are the work that I've,
Right.
put so much into. Concerts.
But are those masters stored in an archive?
Masters are gone.
Wow.
Like
You don't have any plan for your archive per se, like you're going to find an archive for it to be stored in.
My first 4 albums, I guess, I think the masters is 24 track, and they were stored in a facility that flooded, so they were gone.
In the unit, not the Universal Fire, somewhere else.
No, just a small facility. And my father, for example, when he retired from the music business, he had tons of stuff, like master tapes and
where'd that go?
Well, it was in a storage facility, and year after year after year, he didn't pay the rent of the storage facility. So it all got auctioned off to God knows where. So that's all. So I guess, even though I have an emotional want to hold on to everything, by circumstances in my life, I haven't held on to it.
Yeah.
And I'm also aware that digital masters.
No, you gotta replace the hard drive every 10 years, and you gotta check the hard drive every year. And if you drop the hard drive, it's broken. Because we're doing this huge project on archiving, and you'd be amazed at how many people go, I don't care. Zappa had a huge archive, but he said, after I did, I don't care what you think of me. And now, one guy at Universal owns Frank, and I just, you probably know him, Bruce Resnikoff, and he used to sell bootleg rock t-shirts in the parking lots. And I says, Zappa's t-shirts guy probably used to beat him up. Now he owns Frank. It's like this whole thing about owning and archiving. But indeed, deep down inside, it's back to that thing you said about the cave hours. See me, don't forget me. And it is an amazing tendency. So it seems as like archiving is innate in us, but it is.
I think
how did Ram Dass get over that? Be here now. Like, what happened? I would like to ask Ram Dass, what happened to your archive, dude?
Well, Jerry, I think this is what it comes down to. If you have somebody that is doing your archiving
for you,
then you have an archive.
Yeah.
Ram Dass, there's a vast Ram Dass archive.
Someone did it for him.
There's a vast Ali Akbar Khan archive of classes, every single class that he ever taught.
But it's right back to this. It's Joan Baez. They just made a documentary on her and said, do you have anything? She goes, yeah, there's a storage space. I've never opened it in 50 years. My mom saved everything. So it was the holy grail for the documentarians. Then they're interviewing her and they go, well, what are you going to do with all this? She goes, I don't know, throw it off the side of a mountain. I don't care. And her assistant goes, oh, we're negotiating with Smithsonian to store it there right now. Well, we want it stored and used as historical important information. But is that need in the human to archive? Please don't forget me. Is it the memory or is it the physicality of the,
Well, I think that in this conversation, I realized that even though I haven't archived, I think that there's an innate desire to archive.
Yeah.
But let's say about my son. There's a part of me that wishes that everything that I've ever done musically is accessible to my son.
Yeah.
But then there's a second reality, which is that my son would not be interested in it.
Yeah.
But then there's the best reality, which is super real, which is that my son has inherited from me passion for music, love of music, talent for music, and all encompassing immersion in music. So then, yes. So I'm missing some of the pieces of that pie.
Yeah.
But the more important piece of the pie is full on.
Totally. You want him to carry on with the passion. If he has the tape, some kid's going to come up to him and say, "I got a tape of your dad from 30 years ago. His wife made him throw it out, but I dumpster dove it." I dumpster dove my friend's archive once in Venice. I said, "Dude, I only could carry so much. You better go over there and get the rest." Like master tapes, master acetones. But Jai, you said you wanted to close out, but let's please.
It's not that I want to, is I have.
No, I know. But I would really want to plan a part 3. And again, it could be 2, 3, 4 months down the road.
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
Okay, that's good. But can you, in closing, whenever you can you tell me, how is your son doing at GIT? Is it working out?
Musicians Institute.
Oh, MIT.
It's working out great.
Good.
He loves it. He's so happy. He's thriving personally, and his music is thriving. He's getting all A's, which wouldn't matter particularly. But,
great.
But it shows something, because in high school he barely got through high school.
Yeah.
And now he loves his classes, even the super technical classes, like sight reading rhythms, which are, that's not a fun thing to study, but he's into all of it. And he was just here this past weekend. I think I mentioned it, and his playing is so beautiful, and and he's also meeting a lot of musicians, young people, and jamming, and
beautiful.
It's really great. I miss him a lot.
Please tell him I would love to connect with them and show him Venice. We have a whole slew of musicians. I know he could work into this community, and I'm always open.
Hey, Jerry, I'm playing in LA on March 9th, and I'll put you and Susie on the guest list if you want to come.
Where are you at?
It's a place called the Art of Living Dome.
Okay, well, we'll be in connect through email, because there's a good chance we would love to go. I mean,
my son is playing with me.
Oh my God. And then we could finally meet him too. So March 9th, I'll mark the calendar. But again, last time as we closed out, I forgot to plug your new CD, but I wanted people to know you do have this new CD. What is it called again? I wrote it down. Now I can't find it.
It's called Dust and Tears.
Dust and Tears.
Talk about the struggle. Dust and Tears.
Yeah, dust. That's the two words too. And it's beautiful because your website is listed on the link below this podcast, and people can go to that, and it's a really good website, because you can hear a clip, you can see the graphics of the liner notes. It's really beautiful.
And Jerry, when is our conversation available for the public?
As soon as I hit end broadcast, it's on YouTube.
Oh, wow. So then I need to send you the information about the gig in 10 days and a week and a half or something. Because then people...
Oh, yeah, you send that to me via email. But I mean, people could go, if they're listening and they want to go to your gig, they can just go to your website on that.
Yeah. That's true.
But Jai, thank you so much. This has been so much fun, and I'm sort of glad we didn't end part 2, because I was kind of rushing, and now we can really go more leisurely for part 3, and maybe part 4, 5, and 6 too.
Maybe so. Like, chatting with you is awesome.
It's so fun, and it's so unlike.
My love to Susie also, and to you, and to be continued.
Thank you so much. And again, as I said last time, I'm going to hit the end broadcast button. I hope this never ends, and we keep talking forever and ever with the word you used earlier, infinity.
Infinity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ciao.